All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. This is your afternoon tropical update. We are unfortunately still watching the tropics this late into November. As we talked about the other day, we do have another area of interest that is quickly gaining traction to become our next named storm. And it looks like we're going to have at least one more rodeo to go in a very busy and very grueling 2024 hurricane season. Unfortunately, it looks like we are going to be tracking eventually Tropical Storm and probably Hurricane Sara into early next week, and it does appear to be some threat to Florida, but it remains to be seen exactly what and if it even becomes an issue. But we are going to have a storm to talk about regardless. So looking at the Atlantic Basin here today, this is our area to watch, our little tropical wave here in the Central Caribbean moving slowly westward. This is going to basically sit down right here in the Western Caribbean, very close to Nicaragua and Honduras over the next couple of days, form up into a tropical storm, probably a hurricane, and then eventually move northward going into next week. But the exact track timing details, very important for any potential follow-on impacts to Florida. So National Hurricane Center's afternoon update, they're up to 90% on this one. It's going to happen. It's going to be a named storm. No doubt about it at this point. The question is becoming not so much what, but where and when. True color satellite imagery this afternoon over on Tropical Tidbits. We do have a nice collection of showers and storms in the or really central Caribbean at this point. The system looks like it's right here, right now, south of Hispaniola, and it kind of is, but this is more of a mid-level center. We have a low-level trough axis that's not really a defined low pressure as of yet on the surface. We don't really see low-level clouds moving in a kind of a southeast or a southwest kind of direction as of yet. But we do have some winds working in from the southeast, moving northwest. We have a nice flow of moisture in from the Pacific. So all this is going to move along very slowly into the Western Caribbean next 2 or 3 days. And I think by Thursday, Friday, we're going to start to see something form. So taking a look at our computer models again on Tropical Tidbits, we'll tell you two stories. Basically, this is the short term of what can happen with this. So we know that a low pressure will begin to form probably going into Thursday. We probably got one more day to watch this, fiddle fart around and not really do a whole lot. And as we go into Thursday and then really into Friday, this is when we think, okay, we'll see a low-level center. We'll start getting our organization check boxes. We'll have either potential tropical cyclone or a tropical storm at that point. The GFS holds the storm offshore. Now, watching Nicaragua and Honduras, this is very important because the GFS shows the storm meandering offshore, being able to quickly intensify and organize into a very strong storm, potentially a hurricane, as we work into Saturday, Sunday, and even into early on Monday before the storm is able to start lifting northward Monday afternoon. Okay, so I just took you through like 4 or 5 days right here ahead of where we are now. Okay. But you notice on the GFS, the storm stays offshore as it begins to move northward. This is very important because the European model has trended to something a little bit different. The European model shows this being a little bit further west. Now, this isn't on top of land, but the European shows a significant part of the circulation having to cross land to get back into the storm, which would hamper and would greatly taper the rate this was able to intensify. Now, I can't exactly tell you which model's right, but in my experience, it's been that storms that sit in very light steering flow tend to lean to being offshore because that's usually where the stronger thunderstorms develop, and the vortex is typically more likely to tug offshore. But it does appear this is going to get kind of close, and we will have to watch that short-term micromanage. And that lasts not even into the weekend, but even after the weekend, because as the European shows, going into Sunday and Monday when the Euro lifts this northward on Monday, because that's when we think Monday is when we think this starts lifting out of the Caribbean towards the Gulf of Mexico. Okay. The European pulls us into the Yucatan Peninsula, again, where the GFS around the same time, the exact same time actually, is pretty significantly offshore. This is the same model run. Well, I just closed the GFS, but same time, different model runs. Again, GFS was way over here and way stronger, and European off to the left and weaker. So whether the storm cuts up near the western tip of Cuba or the Yucatan Channel or goes over the Yucatan Peninsula is our first major checkpoint. In terms of intensity, assuming this stays offshore, it's going to have a very good environment for intensification. This is the afternoon GFS upper air run, showing 200 millibar winds. We have a very classic dual outflow channel establishment right here where we have air evacuating the storm to the north, air being pulled into the Pacific from the south. We have great outflow in multiple quadrants, and we have an upper air pattern that is moving just far enough north of our storm to help it, but not harm it. As I've talked about in the past, this is like when you build a campfire and you want to blow on it with just a little bit of air to get it to move and get it to grow a little bit. But if you blow on it really hard, it just goes out. Same thing with hurricanes. They like a little bit of this air to help them out, but they don't want too much. And we have a perfect scenario in the month of November here for a Caribbean hurricane. This is not uncommon. The weather pattern does this sometimes, but unfortunately, the upper air pattern shows very little wind shear interference, even into early next week. It looks like the middle of the week will be when the wind shear picks up, but it will not be an issue early on. Water temperatures down there in the Caribbean still hot, still deep warm water. Again, Caribbean not only known for warm water temperatures on the surface, but the depth of how warm that water is a great help for the hurricanes to generate more fuel, even especially when they're sitting for a couple of days. The Western Caribbean can support a storm sitting over that water for a few days before it starts to upwell too much cold water. So that's definitely a factor. Moisture does not look to be a big issue. I mean, there's going to be a lot of dry air to the north of the storm, but given how this air kind of moves off and around the storm versus moving into it, given that there's no like real strong advection into the storm, I don't believe that that's going to be a big hindrance. You could see some dry air fingers wrap around and try to work their way in. On occasion, it might cause little fits and starts for intensification, but I would not expect dry air to be a major factor until middle of next week. Okay, so talking about middle of next week. So we have a storm that likely forms by Friday, or so. We know into the weekend it's likely going to have a window to quickly intensify, assuming it's offshore of the Central American region, and assuming that it doesn't run into the Yucatan Peninsula going into Sunday night into Monday, we're probably going to have a hurricane at least moving northward towards Florida. So what happens from here? Well, quick setup is this. Okay, so we have a cold front that passes the U.S., southeast U.S. this week. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're going to have a nice cold front in the southeast, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, all going to have a nice cool fall shot. Small, it's not going to be really, really cold or anything, but it'll be nice and cool and dry. Okay, that high pressure, see this line, this is 588. This is anchored right here on this map. This is a busy, kind of weird map. Just storm is here. And the high pressure guiding our storm is this 588 line on the GFS, anchored over Florida and bananaed into parts of the Bahamas. Okay, this is what keeps the storm kind of held down. As we work into Monday and Tuesday, this starts to rotate offshore. Notice how by Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, notice where this went. It's over here now. Center of our high is allowing our storm to move around it to the north. But what's quickly coming in from the west is another strong cold front. Another strong trough is moving into Texas, digging into Texas and the plains. And this is kind of a complex, multi-layered system, big winter mess that's coming into the central U.S. around the beginning of next week. Okay, this front will turn our storm back to the east, either over or before it gets to Florida. And the question is, how much can it lift Monday, Tuesday before this kicks it back to the east quickly on Wednesday? Now, remember, we are in November, so these troughs and these winter systems are very strong, okay? So even if we have a strong hurricane here, it's going to get absolutely booted back to the east quickly. So we think the amount of latitude this can gain is limited, but that does not mean it can't gain enough latitude to run right over Florida somewhere as it exits, okay? So we don't want to overplay that, but we know this isn't going to come like straight into Louisiana or something like that. It's going to have to turn pretty quick. Okay, the GFS shows this happening a bit quicker, so this storm has more time to lift northward, and then it gets cut off to the east. So as we go into Tuesday night into Wednesday, we see the upper level weather system over Texas move into Louisiana and the Mississippi Valley, and all those strong upper winds start forcing our system back to the east, and it brings it right over Florida Wednesday afternoon. That is around the Naples, Punta Gorda, whatever area. Now, we're not too worried about the specifics on where the storm lands on these models. We are 7 days out. We're not going to be looking at towns and cities yet. We're just showing you one potential option. Storm stays offshore, stays stronger, moves up, moves into land. Other option, like the Euro shows, same map, same setup, high pressure over Florida, same lines we're watching. Notice how Monday into Tuesday, the same thing happens. This high rotates into the Bahamas and the Cuba, Hispaniola area. The storm comes up on the backside of it, but it's over to the west. So now it's ran into Honduras, it's ran into Belize, it's ran into the Yucatan, and it's coming off of land, and it's much weaker. The Euro also sees this trough a little weaker than the GFS does. It doesn't show as deep or strong of a trough digging into Texas. It shows a quicker, more progressive one. And it starts picking it up more over here, and it runs it more like into the Florida Keys and like grazes South Florida, but it's a much weaker storm that's being captured as it moves away. which could mean more kind of hybrid impacts, not so much true hurricane impacts, but more like a hybrid winter storm type impacts. Will still be significant, but may not be as bad as what the GFS showed, because the Euro shows more land interaction and a more quick capture of the storm, where the GFS shows it more being nudged by the trough. Notice how far away the trough is on this one versus on the Euro. It's basically part of the trough. It's really hard to make out where the storm actually is. Those are your two kind of two of the several options that are on the table. European ensembles show this well. The stronger European members are more to the south. The weaker ones are further north. About 50-50 come over Florida, maybe 60-40 come over Florida, and there's a couple that still come south of Florida. Remember, if the track comes just south of the Keys, although the Keys may still get hammered pretty good, the worst of the waves and the surge would stay well offshore, and the worst of the storm would stay offshore as well. But the potential for a significant impact to Florida, at least a strong tropical storm, if not a hurricane, and a very, still a low but not zero chance of a major hurricane. I hate to say that this time of year, but it's not impossible. Is still a thing for South Florida. Okay, so what I would be doing right now if I was in South Florida, Tampa and Melbourne southward, I would be reviewing my hurricane plan. I would be making sure I still have my supplies. I still knew what I was going to do, and I'd be ready to drop and execute it if I needed to going into next week. Okay, we're not at the time of action. We're not at the time of dropping hats and making decisions. We're just watching for now. There's a lot of time to go on this. It hasn't even formed yet. These models can and will change to some degree or another, but the threat is becoming a little more real. But we're not quite there yet in terms of solidity. We need to see this thing form up. We need to see what the steering patterns look like. There's a lot of late season chaos here, and there's a lot of flies left in the ointment. We got to pick them out one by one. It's going to take some time. Okay, hurricane hunters are out there tomorrow morning. They're going to get a good look at it. We're going to have some more computer model specific runs. Now that we have an invest tag, you'll see more hurricane specific models. We'll have more ensembles. We'll have a lot more to throw at this next 2 or 3 days. So we get it developed and we go from there. And then by Friday, Saturday, we're probably going to have a better idea of where this is going to wind up and who might be a threat. So we'll have daily videos. We'll have daily updates checking in until then. And we will have all the updates here and on the Facebook page, guys. So for now, just keep watching. And until then, stay safe and have a good one.